welcome to another episode of Crosstalk. Now, this technically would be a 7th Plymouth District edition. Try saying that 3 times fast. But it's a regular crosstalk, but the hope is, whoever the winning candidate is, that we will continue the tradition of having the candidates in like we have not only for the 7th Plymouth, but we do it for the 6th Plymouth, and we also have the state senator who comes in. And today we have, as a guest, talking with us about her campaign, we have Alyson Sullivan. Alyson.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Tell us, for folks who don't know you, they should probably know you because you've campaigned really hard,
Yep.
right up past a primary victory. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I'm just a girl from Abington, Massachusetts. Born and raised in Abington. Grew up in the 7th Plymouth District as my home. I graduated from Cardinal Spellman High School and went on to Suffolk University where I got my bachelor's degree. After graduating, I got a job with the United States Immigration Court, and I worked there as a legal assistant for a couple of years. Then I went on to the U.S. Attorney's Office and worked as a victim witness advocate in their victim witness program. Now I currently work for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts in administration and finance, and I'm a law student at night at New England School of Law.
My goodness.
I'm busy.
You are busy. What is attracting you to want to run for office? Again, you've already shown success. Voters came out, picked
Yes.
you. What is it about running for office? Why do you want to be a state representative?
It's a way of giving back to my community. You know, public service is in my blood. As many know, my father was a public servant. He was a former state rep in this district, former district attorney, former U.S. attorney.
Long list.
Great, yeah, and a great list, you know, and he has a legacy here.
ATF, right?
Yep, former director of ATF, yeah. So big shoes to fill. But then I also have my sister who was in the Army, in the National Guard, and served her country. My grandfather, World War II vet. So it's in me, you know. And I want to give back. I want to give back to the community that I've called home, and I want to be a voice, a new independent voice for the 7th Plymouth District. So,
When you thought about running, what was the process like when you sat down and go, this might be something I want to do? What was the process like, and how did you approach your dad and say, Dad, you know, I'm thinking?
So it was very exciting. It definitely was. When I found out Jeff was running for Senate, this was my opportunity. You know, Jeff has served this district very well and will serve the Commonwealth very well if elected. And when I approached my mom and my dad, they both were very excited. My dad loves campaigning and he loves public service. So of course he was thrilled when he found out that I wanted to follow in those footsteps and make a name for myself, not only, you know, being the Sullivan name, but making sure people know who Alyson is. You know, I have passion. It was very exciting, you know. I didn't have to think long and hard on it. I knew this was where my calling was. So,
knowing that your dad has had such tremendous success as a public servant, somebody who served the district and served this state, what types of questions did you ask him? What types of advice did you go to him? What did you say? How did you approach him and say, listen, you know, this is my first campaign. What would you give me for do's and don'ts? How did you have that conversation?
So we sat down, my mother, my father, and I, we talked about it. We talked about, you know, the good side of campaigning and also the bad side about campaigning and what it's like to put your name out there and the thought of you running against people. And, you know, at the end of the day, you're not going to, you know, make everybody happy. But my father, you know, expressed how fulfilling it was and how exciting it is to meet new people and to be a voice for people that may not have one. So we talked about what it would entail if I would still be able to, you know, work and go to school and campaign and the priorities that I need to put in place. You know, I talked to my dad about what abilities I would have if I was to become a state rep. You know, my dad is my mentor, someone I've looked up to my whole life. You know, it's different being the candidate than it is to be a family member. So, you know, I had the joys of being a family member of my father running, and I saw, you know, the work that he's done. But now being the candidate, I understand why he's done it so many times. meeting just complete strangers and having them say to you, I'm so happy you decided to run. You have my vote. You are such a fresh face. What you're saying is what I agree upon. I had this woman in East Bridgewater. My mother and I, we were out door knocking over the summer. She invited us into her house, had a nice conversation with her. Joyce is her name. And we were in East Bridgewater, and I was thanking the volunteers for holding signs on Election Day. And who do I see in the parking lot? Is Joyce.
Wow.
And she came out specifically to vote for me. And, it was kind of like a feeling that I can't explain, a very exciting moment to think this woman had no idea about any other, part of the election process in the sense of who was running for what seat, but she knew she was coming out to vote for Alyson Sullivan. She said she kept my push card on her dining room table to remind her to come out. So that was definitely like a fulfilling moment for myself.
You had an opponent, Greg Eaton.
I did, yes.
And I believe that there's been a little bit of a unity
Yep.
get together, and
Yep.
it's a united party. Talk to me about having someone like a Gregory and some of the other folks. You get Alex, who is full of energy.
Oh, great, yes.
Being a part of your campaign to get out the word, organizing the standouts and phone banking and all that stuff.
Oh, yeah. I have a great team of support. Alex has been tremendous through the whole thing. When he found out we had a victory, and just the joy in his face was overwhelming. And Greg, Greg ran a great campaign and, very respectful campaign, the two of us. And having him now join the team is a great addition to us. He's jumped in right away, and I commend him for that. So,
you mentioned Joyce. Talk to me about some of the other folks that, prior to the primary and now since the primary, you've been out there meeting. What are they saying to you in regards to some of their concerns that they hope that you will address if you're successful on November 6th?
Some of the main issues that I've come across is obviously the opioid crisis. It's one of the biggest problems that I'm hearing while out door knocking and meeting folks. Another issue is local aid and making sure that, East Bridgewater, Abington, Whitman are all getting their fair share of funding. Chapter 70 is a huge issue to make sure that the state upholds their promise there. So, people are concerned that if we don't get the funding we deserve, that their taxes will go up and they won't be able to stay in the community that they've called home. So that's a big issue. So if elected, that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to fight for more local aid to take that burden off of the people here in the district so they can stay here.
How do you, as a freshman now, go in up to the State House and learn your way around and also be an advocate for the folks you represent? Again, your first year. And what's interesting is that both candidates, it would be your first.
Right.
So it's a question that needs to be asked. What are some of the things that you're going to do to get acclimated to that environment and also be able to get what your district needs?
So I'm not afraid to ask questions. So I have no problem going to other people, senior state representatives that have been there for a while that know the lay of the land, you could say. But one thing I'm not going to be is I'm not going to be a person that just sits up there and just goes along with party lines, majority leaders, minority leaders. I'm going to do what's best for the people in the 7th Plymouth District. I'm not going to lose sight of that. I'm definitely going to be an independent voice. And, I've always kind of been able to have my voice heard. My father would say that I never kind of stood in his shadows. My mother would agree to that. So I have no problem standing up for what I believe is right. And obviously, there's some things that will happen at the State House that might not directly affect the 7th Plymouth, but my key interest is going to be here, Abington, Whitman, and East Bridgewater. So I'll be accessible to everyone in the district for that reason.
What are some of the things? I know that with this current administration, the Baker-Polito administration, they've done a lot to put together bills and have laws passed, the CARE Act, to be able to help when it comes to treatment for opioid addiction, to provide educational materials. Where do we need to go? What course do we need to continue to plot when it comes to the epidemic?
Well, we need to work closely with the people that are here. Like I said, with EB Hope, Learn to Cope, the police chiefs in every district, in every town, Plymouth County District Attorney Cruz, Plymouth County Sheriff Joe McDonald. I mean, they're doing tremendous work here. So what I would do if, elected, I would continue that working partnership with them to ensure that they're getting the grants that they need and the funding that they need to keep doing the process that they're doing and progressing, to make sure that less and less families are being affected by substance use disorder.
Just going with your own personal opinion, education is going to be, I think education personally is going to be a key to hopefully ending the opioid issue. Mm-hmm. How young do you think we should go when it comes to getting information in the hands, and how do we go about putting together a program that's going to gently educate our next generation?
Right. I remember as a kid in elementary school and having a DARE program where you had a DARE officer come in and they'd explain to you the effects of cigarette smoking, drug use, and alcohol abuse. So I think if we kind of stuck with that same program in the sense of, at the end of the day, we're having families being, children are being raised by their grandparents and not their parents because of this epidemic. Yeah. So it's sad. I've had family members that have fallen to the opioid crisis.
I think we all have.
Right. And I think many can agree.
Everybody,
and I think it has. So I think as long as we have this open door type of communication where children in the schools feel safe enough to go to maybe a certain teacher or a certain guidance counselor or even a certain resource officer to be able to talk to them about maybe what's going on at home and feel safe. I think educating the kids and educating the parents as well for signs of potential substance use disorder would be key. I mean, that would definitely take a huge effect. I mean, you look at high school students being injured in sports injuries, and they get hooked on opioids that way. Yeah. I think if we continue to educate the young, but also educate the adults as well, to make sure we come together as a community. I mean, if the community is backing everyone up, then it's a huge resource right there.
Okay, sticking with education, one of the issues that I think looms large is being able to have enough funding. You mentioned local aid earlier. Mm-hmm. Enough funding when it comes to being able to educate your community, especially a municipality. We know the town of Whitman actually is already undergoing a conversation about the fiscal 2020 budget, and we're just a couple of months removed from a budget being started for fiscal 19. What do you feel needs to be done on the state level when it comes to funding education and doing it properly?
I mean, we definitely need to look at the formula as it is right now. In 1993, the formula was meant to fully fund the schools so that our children aren't being affected by it. The children of the next generation, we need to make sure that they have the education and give them the tools they need to be successful, to continue on with this great nation and the great Commonwealth. So I think in the sense of advocating for fully funded schools, Chapter 70, to reevaluating the formula, to ensuring that Abington, Whitman, and East Bridgewater get the money that they deserve. I mean, you look at, like I said before, the formula has failed us. I shouldn't say the formula has failed us, but the Commonwealth has failed us. The state has failed us in the sense of the budget. We don't have a revenue problem. We have the spending problem. So we need to look at where there's fraud and waste in other areas and to bring that money where it's supposed to be and where it was promised to be, and as far as Chapter 70. Abington, I believe the number was $1.2 million on top of this year's budget they should have got if they went by the formula in 1993. East Bridgewater should have got, I think it was $2.2 million. And then Whitman Hanson should have got $3.3 million on top of the budget they already received. So, I mean, those numbers are huge. And if we fully fund schools, then we can use money towards our fire, towards our police, towards our roads, towards other things where we can take the burden off of the residents here in each town.
We talk about, you mentioned the different communities and how they were affected financially. Whitman shares a district with Hanson, and so basically it would be a shared. Talk to me about working across the aisle, because I think it's something that's key in the Commonwealth. It's not a problem that we have as to, if you look at Congress or the U.S. Senate, there's problems that folks can't work with each other. Talk to me about the importance of being able to work with somebody, even if you have to work with the person who doesn't have an R, next to their name?
I'm not going up there with an R or D in the sense of I'm only going to work with Republicans. At the end of the day, it's majority Democrats at the State House. So I'm going to have to work across party lines in order to get things done.
Right.
I have a great working relationship with the governor and lieutenant governor as it is right now. So I believe that with my ability, through my experiences, I worked in Dunkin' Donuts, giving out coffee. I worked in, the restaurant business. I have worked my whole entire life, and I've been able to work with people that I not necessarily agree with them politically, but we can agree on fixing the issues. We see the issues at hand and we come with solutions. We might not get to the same solution the same exact way, but we know we need to have that solution. I'll have no problem working with a Democrat or a Republican to make sure we get things done. Because I believe, like I said earlier, Chapter 70, it shouldn't be a party line issue. It should be across all party lines. Everybody, they should see the effects if we don't have Chapter 70 fully funded.
One of the things I always hear, especially when they're talking budget on a municipal level, is having to deal with unfunded mandates. It's one of those things that the state says this should be done, but yet there's no funding that comes with this should be done.
Right.
What would you like to see done in regards to when it comes to unfunded mandates?
Like I said before, we definitely don't have a revenue problem. So I think the state should definitely look into funding those mandated resources. So we get back to the same issues, if with waste and fraud in other areas of our Commonwealth, if we find where the waste and the fraud is, we'll be able to have the resources to fully fund those mandates. So it's like almost like we can all understand that there is, in the sense of the way we're spending our money. We clearly are getting it. Our budget shows that. But we have to be more fiscally responsible in that sense.
What are some of the other things that you're hearing out there from folks who are considering, whether they want to vote for you on November 6th? What are some of we've talked opioid, we've talked schools. What are some of the other things that you're hearing out there?
I had the ability to go to East Bridgewater to one of the senior dinners that they had at the Standish Sportsman's Club.
Nice.
It was great. Yeah, they had a nice roast beef spread. It looked delicious. I didn't eat any of it. It was really hot out that day. But, the seniors, they're worried about having to leave their homes that they've called home their whole entire lives. They've raised families there. Their grandchildren now, coming to that house that their children once called home. And the fear of losing that house because taxes are going up is a huge issue. Luckily my grandfather, he lives with my parents and, he has the security of that. But I think we need to look at making sure that we're taking care of, everybody across, generations to make sure that the senior citizens aren't being forced out of their homes.
You talk taxes. I know one of the initiatives that has long been discussed is the sales tax. Any thoughts on us eventually rolling back the sales tax, and any other ways that we could curtail raising taxes? Any thoughts on that?
Well, I wouldn't want to raise taxes.
What I'm saying is that to make sure that we don't raise taxes.
Right. I keep going back to the whole waste and fraud in the sense of other departments that are getting money that are not being responsible in, to where the money's going. As far as the sales tax, I was disappointed that it's not on the ballot question. This whole grand bargain bill, to some, it does look like a grand bargain bill.
Hey, we got the sales tax weekend.
Yay. Right? Exactly. And to others, that's a win for us, but to us, it's not. People worked hard on getting those signatures, and to try to get the sales tax rolled back. People, working families, they should be able to have that. You got families that are out here working 2-3 jobs to survive.
Yep.
It's sad that you can't just rely on one job anymore. You got single parents, having other people raise their children in the sense of because they're always at work. They don't have time to spend with their children because they have to make ends meet. So, if I can find ways to not raise taxes, but also give money back to the communities to make sure that, a single mom can work one less job to spend one night home a week to, put her children to bed, that'll be successful right there.
Okay. Let's say you are come November 7th, big party at the Sullivan household. You have been elected to your first 2-year term. You go up to the State House January, you're sworn in. What would be some of the committees that you would hope that you could be chosen for?
So we had that discussion on the radio, and obviously, House Ways and Means. That's the budget right there. Of course, I would love to be on that.
Sure.
The Judiciary Committee, and then mental health, substance use and disorder, and recovery. That's another big one for me. And then obviously, education, to make sure that we're getting the children in the Commonwealth are getting the education they deserve. So those are a few things that I would definitely want to do.
Talk to me about as far as the art of being able to, again, you're successful November 7th, you go up to January. What's the process in order to learn how to be able to put together your own legislation, whether it's something you author or you are co-sponsoring? Have you thought about that process yet?
So it's my understanding, because I've asked people, it's my understanding that they kind of put you through this training, this little boot camp,
Yeah,
when
they
you
also
first
stick you in a pen, too.
Yeah,
All the
I
other
believe
newly
maybe
elected.
down in the basement, wherever. So it's my understanding that you kind of go through this training process to know exactly what you need to do and how to do it to make sure it's done correctly.
Yeah.
And like I said, I'll pair up with mentors, people that are seniors to me, and ask them questions, and continue asking questions that I might not know the answers to make sure that everything's done correctly, and that if I am filing a bill, I'm doing it the correct way.
Do you already have a good working, there's quite the conglomerate of South Shore legislators, part of a legislative delegation that resides down here. And I know that there's still some Republicans who are holding office. Anybody that you've had early conversations with as to kind of get an idea as to the lay of the land, and that you could possibly work with and have as a mentor?
Well, I obviously talked to Jeff Dale. He was one of the first people I spoke
Sure.
to when deciding to run. But I also talked to Representative O'Connor and Sean O'Connell, I'm sorry.
Yep. Taunton, yep.
Yep, and I've had conversations with her. But other than that, I've just been so focused in on, me and the voters here, and not getting too ahead of myself. And earning as many votes as I can, so that I can be successful in November.
Well, we're actually doing this program with of course, plenty of lead time for you to be able to get out there and get your message out there. How are you preparing yourself for this? I mean, it probably seems like a marathon to you.
Well, now it seems like a sprint because we're down to the wire now. But the way that I'm approaching is, the days that I have available, all weekend long, I'm out there, I'm door knocking, I'm going to events, I'm making, it a point to meet as many voters as I possibly can, and residents, and to get my message out there. I have a great team of volunteers that are willing to also work to get my message out there while I'm at work and at school. I have people that are willing to do the door knocking, even though some may think it's a little nerve-wracking going up to doors. But every possible second that I have, I'm using it to get my message and meet people to earn their vote.
You've been able to so far gain the support from some significant folks here on the South Shore. I believe that the District Attorney, Tim Cruz,
Yes.
has supported you. The Sheriff, Plymouth County Sheriff,
Yeah.
Joe McDonald. And I thought I saw something on social media not too long ago that a very prominent woman,
Yep.
whose husband is well known and beloved, he's no longer with us, gave a ringing endorsement. I think I even saw her holding one of your signs.
She was.
Who am I talking about?
Mrs. Kirby, Mrs. Mary Alice Kirby. She's a wonderful, wonderful woman. I was honored to have her on the election day come out to Whitman and hold a sign and wave. She even went home and got her sun cap and her sun jacket because it was so hot.
Sure.
I mean, it was crazy hot that day. And she came back and she held a sign. And when she got too hot or too tired, she sat down underneath the shade and then got back up and waved and was so excited. And, experiencing that and having that experience with her on election night and her at my parents' house and having that victory and turning to her and I was able to say thank you. Thank you for the support. Thank you for reaching out to people that you know and for having faith and trust in me to be able to represent this district well. I mean, she's a legend here.
It's interesting that you say that because I still remember Jeff Deal talking about the gentleman who is outgoing state rep, Jeff Deal, talking about, when he was going to run for office. That was, one of the conversations was with Ned and Mary Alice to talk about it, and they gave a ringing endorsement. And hearing you kind of talk about it and kind of glow as you talk about it is very important. We've got less than 5 minutes. We've really talked about a lot of different things. Anything we haven't touched upon during our time here together, but you feel is kind of important to telling the voters who are watching this right now?
I think what I need to tell the voters is I'm going to be an independent voice if elected. I'm going to work on behalf of the 7th Plymouth District and always keep the 7th Plymouth District in my decision making. The greater good for this district is what we need, and I believe that I'll do it. I'm not going to go to Beacon Hill, and I'm not going to become, someone that falls into, like I said, the majority leader's, decision making. I'm going to be this fresh face and, new voice, and I hope that the 7th Plymouth has trust in me and elects me in November. If
folks want to find out more about you, I'm sure you have
everything.
You have everything. What are some of the primaries, whether it's a website, social media, what are some of the primary ways to be able to get in touch with the campaign? Maybe they want to sign, who knows?
So we have, obviously, our website is, www.alysonsullivan4staterep.com. We also have our Facebook, which is the Committee to Elect Alyson Sullivan. And then we have Twitter, Alyson Sullivan for State Rep, Instagram. There's plenty of different ways to get a hold of the campaign. And then obviously Facebook, you can just search Alyson Sullivan and my profile picture shows up as well.
And we want to make sure we let them know, just like Jeff, when he used to do the show, would remind folks that his name is not spelled the traditional way. Do you want to let them tell?
It's not spelled the traditional way either.
No,
My dad wanted it to be special, so it's Alyson.
Excellent. Well, I want to thank you so much for being a part of the show.
Thank you for having me.
And as we do, we wish all the candidates the best of luck out there on the campaign trail. And the hope is, if you're successful, that you will continue the tradition of doing the 7th Plymouth District Crosstalk program.
Of course, definitely.
Again, we wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.
And we want to let you know that it's important for you to understand who the candidates are, what the campaigns are about. You make the decisions, especially when you go in, you pull that curtain on November 6th. And we'll do our best here at the WHCA to keep you informed. You've been watching Crosstalk. Until next time, have a good day.